Ready or not?
Okay.
Here we go. Hey, everybody. This is Guy Meyer over here on stage left, I think, as you're looking at the screen. And my guest is John Turnicliffe. And we're going to jump in on this Friday, the June 6th, talking about events here in our country as well as California. And my guest, John, if you those who don't know, is the chair of the Marin County Republican Party. Correct, John?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And relatively new in that position. Um, and I've talked to John before. It's available online if you wanted to go to our previous conversation or plural. I think we had a couple. But what we were going to do here is just kind of a little spontaneous conversation about maybe the recent day's events and maybe stepping back in general in terms of looking at where we are in the country in California. The last couple of days has been off the wall, more or less. John, you were mentioning that yesterday. It's like, come back, let's wait 10 more minutes and there'll be the next,
Yeah.
you know,
Next round of
crazy.
events.
Well, maybe things are settling down a little bit today. Give me a give me a brief perspective of how you're seeing things on our world, our
Well,
American world.
from my perspective here, just because we work mostly on county first, state second, and federal third.
Good.
Just usually around the time of the big elections, the federal elections, do we get involved with that? Usually we're working county stuff. So it hasn't been my focus to stay on top of it. And there's so much noise the last couple of days. I'd catch a headline here and then I'd catch another contradictory headline there, and I didn't know who to believe or really what was up. And there was so much emotion involved
Oh yeah.
from at the highest level to everybody who's writing about it, to everybody
Oh
who's
yeah.
reading about it.
Yeah.
It was
No,
such
it's
an emotional thing. I took a step back and I said, I'm just gonna let the dust settle because it was like one of those storms you hear about.
right.
And it was just too much to digest and figure out who's on first. So I took a step back the last couple of days from that topic
Yeah.
and
Well,
wait
I
for
think
the dust to settle.
I think that's good. I think right off the bat we're hitting the nail on the head right now. It's almost the emotional storm that floats out there, happening just as we all observed between Elon and President Trump over the last couple of days. But it goes beyond in terms of the party issues, the state of California, and almost like every story in the newspaper, depending on where your perspective is, has a spin that I mean, if you're aligned with it properly, maybe you can accept it. But the emotions that you're subjected to,
Yeah. And so the thing is, I certainly like Trump, and in fact, he's the reason I got into this after the 2020 election when it went to Biden, and I didn't think that was right. And I thought there was some shenanigans, and I went to dig in to find out. And here I am, chair of the GOP, 2.5 years later, I'm sorry, from then, 2020, so 5 years later. And where was I going with that?
yeah. Well, how you got there, and you're
But because Trump, okay, go back to Trump. So I've liked what Trump does. Now, occasionally I'll raise my eyebrow, going, "Oh, geez, I wish we wouldn't have said that." But I've gotten past that. Occasionally I still flinch, but I've given the example to people that have commented on Trump, and they just don't like him. And he has to change. And I'm thinking, I don't think you can change somebody like that that's been doing the way they do operate for his lifetime and his late 70s. So that's a long time operating time. It reminded me when people used to say when Tiger Woods was at the top of his game, he was winning. He had all four majors in a row that nobody else has ever done. He was winning major tournaments, which is the pinnacle. It's usually 1, 2, or 3 strokes somebody wins by. He was winning by 10 to 12, by far the best player in the world for years. And people were saying, you know what? If he didn't dip down when he hits the ball and stayed up like everybody else does, he'd probably be a lot better. And he didn't. He finally eventually changed as the years went on because, you make one tweak and it affects something else. And then the ripples start. And so I would not. I'm fine with Trump doing what he does because the outcomes I've liked. And if there's something there I didn't like, I just deal with it and comment wise and move on because the things that he's done, he's the first politician I think in my life that has done the majority of the things that he said he would do when he was campaigning, except for the Ukraine war, Ukraine Russian war. And I mean, he goes back. He's the only politician that I remember, and I would love to be challenged on this because I haven't found one that has been saying the same thing for over 30 years. I saw Obama change his mind on immigration between the time he was in office until now. I saw Biden, I saw Pelosi, and I saw Schumer, all of them talking about being tough on immigration when Obama was around. And now they're just completely the opposite way. Trump has been the same since he was on Oprah's show in the 80s, talking about, the United States is getting screwed on trade, and he wanted to do something about it. And he finally was able to. And so many people sound like it was a shock. It's like that's what people voted for him for. One of the things. So
Yeah,
I'm happy.
I was trying to remember just recently when was the first time I ever like either heard him be interviewed or like a Playboy magazine interview, maybe going back as far as the 70s.
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember and thinking among my youthful peer groups who saw the same thing, there was sort of like this uh, acknowledgement, admiration. The guy was, at least he had a rebel sense going way
Yeah,
back.
that's a good
You
way to put it.
know,
Yeah.
he there was something because I had this vague memory of almost college days, which seems impossible that it could have been that long ago that he would have been interviewed and then but maybe he already was a celebrity back in the early 70s and was being interviewed. But beyond that, I mean, they're talking about flinching. Yeah, there's some flinching going on for me for sure, uh, and yet the where we are, in terms of uh, the approach of either the Republican, I might call it establishment, or the current Republican reaction versus the Democrat, they seem so. I'm just reading the recent thing in the Sacramento Bee. I think it's today about or maybe somebody posted on locally, the next bill coming through Sacramento to ban any homeowner from having vegetation within 5 feet from their house.
No,
And
I
it's
didn't
like,
see it.
wait a minute. I mean, does this ever stop? Like,
Is
do
this in reaction to all
the
of the
fire
insurance
protection?
problems because of fire
Yeah.
and no insurance, or insurance is getting not no insurance?
I didn't read the details.
Yeah.
Somebody was trying to point out that actually a certain amount of vegetation around your house isn't necessarily, a bad thing. There's some vegetation that actually has fire resistant stuff, but that's a
Mhm.
different element, except it just shows that there's still this kind of mindset of just complete taking of an individual's um, rights in order to get them security. That I think is fundamentally right now in the Democrats' zone, but it's not to say that that both parties can be guilty of taking away. I think individual rights. I think that's why. If it,
Well, the only thing I can say about California in that example, and I'll get back to Elon,
yeah.
is Republicans have zero control in California, so it has to be the Democrats.
Oh yeah.
Republicans can't do one thing. They're outnumbered. In fact, I was doing I have a radio interview next week, and I wanted to do a little prep work. I'm going to get the exact number
Yeah.
of senators in assembly on both sides, but it's beyond the majority. So the Republicans literally cannot do anything unless it's so obvious that everybody has to do it that they can get the Democrats on board.
Right. It's been what they call the supermajority.
Yeah.
I had the statistics in front of me a while back, but it's been going on for, I don't know. I'm not sure how many years now. I think maybe approaching 10 years or maybe even more, or maybe just approaching that of just solid supermajority. And it's definitely, to me, a huge detriment to the state of California.
Well, and along with being a supermajority, all of the statewide officials, elected officials, are all Democrat too. So there's not one elected statewide, governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, those type of offices. There's not one Republican. So it's kind of the way I describe it is it's kind of like the Harlem Globetrotters. You look at them, you walk in the arena, you think they're a professional basketball team, but they really have no competition. They look good where they're there, but if they really went to play a big game, the Harlem Globetrotters, they would get crushed by an NBA team once they got playing with the real guys. So the Democrats have no incentive to do anything except what they want to do. And look at the state now. I can't think of one shining star in the state offhand. The insurance is, I just listen to the radio coming in and people are complaining about the insurance. Maybe somebody's starting to come back because they're talking about they're going to clean some of the forestation in the areas, but I haven't heard the end results of that, but it sounds like it's a mess. And between that and then the immigration, illegal immigration, that with a sanctuary state and a sanctuary, some of the big cities are sanctuaries, and then illegals get put on Medicaid when the budget is already short, it just blows the whole thing out. It's like, where's the shining star, the silver lining in the state? I'm not seeing it right now, unfortunately. And I grew up here my entire life.
No, it's sad. I think we're completely ready for some shocking results in 2026. I mean, I really hope that the Republican Party does somehow pull itself together and find a candidate. There may be somebody out there who can deal with, who could take back or give a new vision to this state.
Yeah.
I'm an environmentalist, but I just feel like the Democratic version of environmentalism is just it's BS. And I think if the Republicans could pull that together, I think that'd be the magic formula to actually.
We are trying to, at least our local level, get together a plan to promote, because everybody in our group is doing the same thing that everybody else is doing as far as trying to protect clean water, clean air, and all the good things like that. Yeah, we're kind of blamed, or not blamed, but talked about like we're dropping oil in the bay or oil in the lake just to dirty things up, and that's not the case. And so we have to get our marketing, our media, outgoing media to present that, and nobody will believe it at first, and maybe over time they'll see through actions, we're serious about that. But there's so many. I mean, and that is a big deal. But the state is running out of money, and the cities, all the big cities, San Francisco and LA for sure. I assume Sacramento. I don't know about San Diego. Are negative. And so when they get so many years of being negative, they have to go somewhere. So they go to the state. But the state is going to be in the same situation, have to go to the Fed. Well, the Fed's in the same situation, so they're going to have to print money, and then we really have a problem. A big problem than we have.
Yeah, no, the states is just talk about the Doge issue, whether you want to shake your head at to somewhat the futility of it, as Rand Paul was pointing out just yesterday, of whatever $200 billion worth of savings, and then add another $300 billion on the big beautiful bill. The state, just asking how many state agencies does California have on Wikipedia or Google it, and I mean it's a question mark. I'm not even sure they know, but it's upward about 60, and it's completely. They spend so much time. The Attorney General, right? The huge thing about protecting California from Trump's attack. But what are they doing for what's going on with, they don't even define what an attack is. The newspapers, that was a line from the Sacramento Bee today, it just left out there. What do they mean, attack? Is there some physical thing you're talking about? It was just left out there as sort of again, the emotional spin. But I was looking at this story in some medical guy in the prison system, right? The doctor, and he finds that his name has been used electronically for hundreds of official documents that he didn't sign, but they're using this, and he's complained for 2 years to
Oh,
the state, to the attorney general, and they're all turning a blind eye to it. But to me,
oh,
there's just so many different elements of which our California bureaucracy is unfettered and you know just doesn't know what it's doing.
yeah. And I'm beginning to wonder, somebody brought this up at one of our meetings or conferences in the last couple of months, that it seems like, and I have to do some study on this, so this is I'm just kind of winging this one at the moment, is that it seems like when they get to the higher office, the Democrats get to higher office in here, they'll move out somewhere, somebody will come in and get appointed, they'll finish off that term, then they're incumbent, and then they get reelected, and then they go and do it again. So I don't know if, I'm trying to think if either of the senators there now were elected. Oh, yes.
Padilla,
Adam Schiff just was over.
yes, Schiff was just elected, right?
But going back, Feinstein died, and that started that whole thing. Somebody filled Feinstein's place, somebody filled his place. They're going to get in the system, and it just seems like they just kind of keep leapfrogging that. Not everyone, but enough that it raised some eyebrows. It's like, that's a pretty good strategy if you can do it. Somebody maybe resigns midterm that's been there a while, and then they take somebody from Secretary of State and make him senator, take somebody else and put him in a Secretary of State. I don't even know if the Secretary of State here was elected or not originally versus appointed. I'd have to go back and check, but it's happening enough that people are wondering what's going on. So just a thought. It's
yeah, we're on this joyride of civilization, and can we reach? I mean, is the concept that it's a free for all, to everybody grabs what they can, money, the billionaires, and like as it gets up to 11 billion population, it's hard to see the positive, reaching sustainability. Like, oh, when are you gonna cure inflation with an ever-growing population, with ever diminishing space for new houses, etc. To me, that as an environmentalist and a new Republican, we got to look into the future. And when does that number? I was just thinking of Googling that 11 billion number. Now, when are they projecting that to happen on the planet? Like one generation from now, like 20 years from now, or 30 years from now? But will the same issues come up then that are even right now? Oh, we need more. We always need more people. Wall Street is already saying that. And for me, it's like, okay, what would it be like if we were to find a stable population growth, or find that our population growth was naturally beginning to diminish? I feel like there we have the beginning of to me, a very potentially more livable and attractive future and lifestyle possibilities. But that goes against our sense of what, how everything has to keep getting bigger and bigger.
Conflicting. I mean, I'm not
the building industry, so to speak.
I'm not a population expert by any means, but I've been hearing conflicting stories from people that seem to be in the know. And you have Bill Gates saying, if the vaccines work properly, we'll be able to reduce the population by 1.5 billion people. Saw the video on that. And yet, on the other side, they say we don't have enough people to work, which is, I just still can't believe that. We
It does seem impossible to believe, almost.
To me, it does seem impossible.
I just, I think to some degree, like looking at the tariffs that Trump was proposing, and at what level, some of them, it seemed obviously 145% against China was some kind of uh, bargaining
Yeah, I'd say
slap in the face.
negotiating thing.
Right. But yet environmentally, to me, like that a 10% tariff across the board would indeed be a boost or a challenge for all the countries of the world to start um, taking back their own manufacturing base at whatever levels they can, and might indeed be an environmental benefit for the planet. I don't know. I look for creative ways that we could have I don't know, maybe a slower lifestyle, though we don't need this constant
Yeah,
acceleration.
that might be
I mean,
it
that's
looks like it's be accelerating faster than it has been with the AI stuff. I was listening to some guys this morning talking about they're starting to build, I don't know, it was jet engines or jet parts or something, and other things like that. And they build it something used to take, say 15 months, now takes 2 or something like that. And they build it at like half the cost because they don't have all the inefficiencies because it's AI developed and then 3D printed. They're manufacturing stuff with 3D printing. And this was big business. They're talking about their next facility is going to be $50 million facility. So it's it was a Southern California company. And it was like just like wow. I think about AI and what I use it for is shortcuts instead of Google, but these guys are using it to change the world. I mean, they're talking about changing manufacturing in general because the stuff they developed is proprietary. So they're the first ones with this, and they've been building some serious stuff for some serious companies. So it's not just a startup that's looking to get started. He says the payback on a new facility for them is 6 months, which is unbelievable.
Well, there's issues with some of this speed, and I think that's probably brings back to the issues of a definition of what actually is progress. I found some really good definition. I'm not sure if it was this character I really enjoy reading about his life, Henry Adams, but his notion of progress that it had to do with finding ways to do things with less resistance is progress. So you find, less work or less
Mhm.
energy. But a lot of this is what seems to make things faster. If you're creating a immediately unseen toxic residue that's under the carpet. Oh, you're not noticing that the lithium ion batteries are potentially part of or actually been now identified as part of the PFAS forever chemicals. Or if you're not noticing that these giant wind turbines out in the ocean that are affecting marine life, you're not noticing that this is actually creating resistance. It's actually it's not improving progress. It's sort of it's a phony progress that's going to come back and maybe get the next generation, or not even maybe. It seems like the next generation is going to be dealing with a lot. Anyways, Marjorie Taylor Greene had something about the AI and the big bill. Did you see about that?
I
Notice
didn't.
that?
I didn't see that.
Well, she was regretting her vote, she said, because in this big, beautiful bill that I tend to agree with Elon, that was my sense too, that it's just too big. It's the old school. It's like the
Yeah.
way it's been done for the last, getting worse and worse, 1,000-page bill. You don't know what's in it. So Marjorie Taylor Greene was like saying here, I made a copy of what she said. uh, so it's she is Marjorie Taylor Greene, who voted to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill Act in the House last month, slammed her provision of the proposal on Tuesday, noting that she had realized it was in the measure, she would have voted against passage. The provision Greene is sounding the alarm about would significantly restrict states from regulating artificial intelligence for a decade.
I did hear about that
But that
part. Yeah.
seems like, that would not be a Republican, thing.
Yeah, I agree. I
And
agree.
sure comment. I'll just skip it. She actually has the provision there, but we'll skip that. She says we have no idea what AI will be capable of in the next 10 years. And giving it free rein and tying state hands is potentially dangerous. This needs to be stripped out in the Senate. And maybe her raising her voice will get that way. And she already took a little flack from, well, why didn't you read this before you voted?
Well, yes.
That's a 1,000-page
They
thing.
give it to you the day before or a couple of days
Yeah,
before.
it's just the
That's
way
just
government
what
is
they do
done.
occasionally.
So I do think that Elon's on it, as far as I can see, that there really should be a different way of throwing these bills together in DC because
Yeah. Well, there's a
I don't
couple
know
of parts there. One is what she said, and I agree with your response too, is to me, not having somebody watching what's going on, it's like I say, it to me, it's like, okay, develop a defense industry because we need a defense industry, but you get a few rogue guys and all of a sudden you have a problem. And the same thing in AI, you get a few rogue players that aren't watched, or there's no mechanism to keep them from going rogue. There could be problems. I mean, the possibilities are wonderful, but the potential negatives are
I
can be
mean,
pretty extreme.
there is this, when you're fighting for your side, like the Democrats have their vision of green energy, and because they do, they they don't want to scrutinize. They don't want to look closely. We can't slow this down. This is a dire emergency, and whether when you're in like Elon's project in Memphis. I had to post this on. It's available. This thing came up, and I just learned about this giant uh, AI, his XAI factory that he put in Memphis. Like with that was just as you were saying, done extraordinarily fast. Except all the residents were starting to notice that they had this. They were kind of choking in these smells, and he had 35 giant method gas burning generators powering. The whole power behind AI is the whole planetary issue, of like,
Well, that was once they were up and running.
well, this was powering his
Okay.
his thing, and then after the fact, because townspeople uh, were outraged at their own government for approving it, and that there wasn't, he didn't even had to get permits for this, and it was, this burning, I don't know, gas or whatever. But it's an issue. But it's this. The point is, there's this rush. AI has got this rush going on. The competitors in the AI world are all fighting each other. I read a book about 3 or 4 years ago about AI that was written by the Pentagon's former head of AI, and pointing out that this giant push, a lot of it started with the Defense Department seeing that this was an extraordinarily crucial element that of world say control. I don't mean to be defense, security. I mean, are you
Mhm.
going to let the Chinese or the Russians get the handle on this incredible ability to do every calculation under the sun in 10 seconds? We have to have this. But again, no scrutiny because we're in a rush. No looking at the after effects because we don't want to look at the side
Right.
effects of anything because we're in a rush. Anyhow,
No, that's right.
going on.
But we haven't really had much conversation just as far as our local GOP stuff on that because that's out of our scope or out of our reach actually. So
Yeah, there was a little debate. There are a number of Republican people who've thrown their hat in the governor's race. Uh,
met a couple of them.
yeah, have you met Steve? Or did you meet Steve Hilton?
Steve Hilton and Chad Bianco have been talking to oh geez, several others. I'm just meeting him. I mean,
Right,
Hilton was obvious because he was on Fox, so he was easy to meet.
right.
And Bianco
He's a good
I
speaker.
met a couple times, and they'll be coming through Marin, both of them in August and September.
Hmm.
So we're looking forward to that. And I'm going to say there's 10, but they're the only two names I would have known until a few started calling. And we want to hear all the, we want the people, the Republicans in Marin to be able to have a choice,
Mm.
an educated choice to, maybe there's a, diamond in the rough there that just hasn't had public exposure, but they're really good. And you start talking with them and listening to them, it's like, geez, if that guy can do half of what he says, he's gonna be incredible.
Yeah.
And so we're going to try and get as many through here, but we have to get people to attend. Otherwise, we're driving from Los Angeles for 5 people.
Mhm.
It gets discouraging, but we could do some Zoom calls. We're going to figure out how to do it for the, I'll say the lower known, less well-known that might not get a crowd. Bianco and Hilton will get a crowd. Certainly, if you heard rumors, Rick Grinnell and Mel Gibson, they'd get a crowd, but I don't know if either of them are actually going to happen. Rick Grinnell seems to be pretty busy with the Kennedy Center in DC, I think, and
And what is he doing with that?
he is running it now, I think, for
Oh,
Trump.
really?
Kind
Has he become the
I think he's
official?
either the CEO, whatever they would call it. I think he's the top guy there.
Oh, well,
If
okay.
not, he was getting credit. He was getting credit for being the top guy last night because they had some huge event last night. I think last night or night before, and he was getting the accolades for a job well done. So I'm assuming that was his position.
I'm trying to remember who I was suggesting to Trump that he should get to run that. Somebody in the country music vein, I thought would be good. But
so we're looking to get people coming through, and we're excited. And that's one of the reasons that we're going to push for things. This is going to be a big push. Is they changed the voting system. I don't know how many years ago. Again, I have to do some research on this, being only in this position for a few months. But they changed it. Remember, it always used to be you get the top Republican, the top Democrat, American Independent, Libertarian, Green, etc. And now it's the top 2 during the primaries.
right.
And the way it's been playing out, it's Democrats. In fact, last Senate, the last general election for Senate, when it was Schiff and Garvey, I think Schiff was Garvey's #1 contributor because he knew he knew he would be able to beat Garvey, but he was more concerned about his Democrat contenders, so he funded Garvey's campaign.
Right.
So he's gotten that out of hand. And
well,
so
I think, I mean,
voters don't have the choice that they used to have. I mean, on paper, it sounds like they do, but they really don't.
yeah, no, it's terrible that the open primary proposition from 2010 is what did.
Okay.
But the Republicans, because of if the Democrats, I mean, hopefully a Republican contender is looking at, if they in this primary, if none of them really emerges strongly and they're all kind of blah kind of faces of Democrats, it certainly gives an opportunity if the Republican contender can come forward more or less solo with a creative conservative vision for California. And
that's been a concern in the conversation I've been having with different counties.
Yeah.
At either chairman's meetings or state meetings or regional meetings.
Yeah.
The concern is, it's got to be whittled down.
Yeah.
So when it's showtime, it doesn't split up and then just fall apart. If there's
Yeah,
3 people at the end to split the vote, there's no chance.
No. And is there a possibility that a convention, a Republican convention will pick the Republican? Is that what's going to happen? Or is it just?
It's not before the primary usually, which is unfortunate because a lot of times there's nothing after the primary.
Yeah, no, it seems like strategically it would.
But they can change things. So maybe they'll see that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because it's not there. I don't know this. I'm just speculating. They're using old school, say, rules based on the way it used to be.
Right.
Where you'd have a Republican after the primary and you endorse them and away you go. And so we'll have to see what goes on this year because there's a new chairman of the GOP, state GOP, and I'm not familiar with how she operates. And maybe nobody is because she's new last couple months. So we'll see. But that is a concern of splitting the vote because there's not, it's going to be kind of like threading a needle. And if you split the vote, it's like trying to thread 2 needles about, a foot apart. It's pretty tough.
Right. Well, the last election, though, I do feel like the Republican Party just almost disappeared. Like the fellow who ran against Newsom, it just seemed like he didn't have anybody behind him in terms of a force to get his name out or any recognition. It might
This
have
is
been just
embarrassing. This is
me.
embarrassing. I don't remember who it was at this point.
I know too. I'm still trying to.
I wasn't involved. I was not even involved at that election. I was not involved.
Daly, I think his name was, and it makes me want to like find out who the heck was this. I don't want to say poor guy. Maybe it was his own doing or whatever. But then there's that other element of people who run for office as Republicans in California, and maybe, as we've talked about this a little bit, don't expect to win, and therefore they don't try very hard somehow, or whatever it is. I don't know what it is.
It makes me wonder sometimes. I know, because when I was growing up, I was living in Sacramento, so I was close to it, and Reagan was there when he was governor, and
Right.
it was more, I'll say, upbeat for Republicans.
I would say right now. I mean, I think Republican governor. Uh, the times is totally right. Totally right.
I think
2026. Call it a miracle or whatever, or just call it like uh, it's there for our seizing. I think for the people of California to stand up and
Well,
say,
I agree with you.
"Oh,
I mean, the voting system, though, has to be corrected, and I don't know how to
yeah,
do it when we don't have anybody in power to do it. And an example, the two examples I'll give is
yeah,
one is these are rough numbers. The last presidential election, there were 20 million ballots sent out, and only 11 came back. So that means there were 9 million ballots floating around that could, if they needed to be gathered, ballot harvesting for money. And Stacey Abrams or somebody got in trouble for that in the Southeast. And they could gather up a lot of ballots. College campuses are, I've heard, a good place to do that, but they didn't have to. But there were 9 million ballots that did not get returned, give or take, right in that range. And that, along with, you cannot ask for ID at the voting booth when they come in. Most are mailed in though, so it doesn't make any difference. And the citizenship requirement is almost extinct. So I have to look into how hard they press it, but I'm in the understanding now they don't press it very hard, which is terrible, especially when they've flooded the zone with illegals, with Newsom, putting out the red carpet, come here and we'll give you Medicaid and school and housing, and then who knows if a couple ballots slip through.
Well, I think that in my community, things are still perhaps a little small, a little old fashioned. I don't have that uh, worry or concern when I personally go to the Legion Hall or the fire department or the church where I've gone locally. Always have been good people right there. They've got the book open. Oh, your guy.
Oh, that part's fine. That part is fine. They are good because I've worked that to learn it,
Mm,
and that's the issue, that the people there only do what they're told. They can't ask for ID.
mm.
So they really don't really, it's not too much to do. Just here's your paper and go vote
Right.
type thing. It's the voter rolls that we had before the last election, we had a team that was dissecting Marin voter rolls, and we looked for people that through our software had determined that the people had moved out of state because they went through national change of address, which is a U.S. mail function, and other type of public information that the software could pick up, and then would analyze it, and it would say these people have probably moved. So we went out and checked, and there were, I think we found we only got to maybe 125 or 150. And they were, I was doing it too. I was knocking on the doors, and they said, "Oh no, that person hasn't lived here for 2 years, and I don't know where they are." Or I've lived here for 2 years and never even heard his name. And then we turned that in, and and then the ballots came in for some of those people. We saw afterwards, and they've just switched out the registrar of voters in Marin, just retired, so they put or hired a new person now effective this week. And so we're going to, explain what we ran across last year. We want to clean it up for everybody. It's to everybody's advantage to have a clean, fair voter roll. And so we're going to do our part to try and help clean it up and see what happens. There's a fair amount over 100 years old. And this isn't considered a blue zone, so it seems to be more over 100 than would make sense. Some over 100 and some over 110. So
Well,
a lot
yeah,
the voting system, the voter rolls, and the voting rules are way too lax intentionally. And with every time that something came up like this mail-in voting is not a very good or safe thing. Okay, they make it a state law that's what they're going to do. And there are other items like that for the ID. You know, state law can't ask for ID. And these are things that 10 years ago people would have said you're out of your mind to do that kind of stuff. But they've made that law. The Democrats, 100% Democrat or Democrat control of the state.
we're talking about that. We're talking about that supermajority, this kind of echo chamber of decisions being made. Combine that with in the state house where they've actually the media coverage of what goes on in Sacramento is about 10% possibly of what it once was 20 years ago, when you had different newspapers and radio stations and TV stations throughout California would be up there with Newsom in a microphone in front of his face or somebody. They'd be up. They had people assigned to it. Now they don't. It's things are happening without anybody's paying attention. Sort of a
Well, you mentioned Newsom there, and it just takes me back to I don't know what he's trying to do or who's benefiting from the bullet train or the train to nowhere, that the infamous, which now the feds look like they're going to be pulling back any future funding. I saw earlier this week, and he's still promoting it. It's like I don't get it. If it was from Reading to Bakersfield, right down the valley, that's a potential. LA to San Francisco, I don't know, unless there obviously hasn't been any, incredible new type of design that can go through mountains.
no.
Do it.
It's one of these lessons in knowing when you have to bite a bullet or whatever. So,
Yeah.
bite the. That's actually a good expression for this whole thing. This bullet needs to be stopped. It's just at the rate it is.
And the money going out is it's like money. Who is benefiting from it? I don't know. That's a question in which somebody.
It's right now. It's from Bakersfield to Lowry, which they haven't even laid the track yet.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know what's up to 20 billion now, and this is the easiest portion of the whole trip. I mean, once they get closer and closer to the Bay Area, it's going to be $1 billion every quarter mile.
At that point, they're going to say we can't do it.
Anyhow, John.
We'll
all right. Well, good to have this conversation with you. I mean, trying to get myself fired up here and just use the studios at home and begin to talk with people again. And
good. I enjoy this. It makes me think about it. It makes me get prepared for things like this. So I appreciate it too, guys.
Right on, both of us. All right. Cheers.
All right. See you next time. Thank you.
Again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. We can shut this down.
Oh, I see. Okay.